Welcome in to the PFF NFL betting show for week 10. On the desk with me, Ben Linsey. Joining us remotely, Judah Fortgang. I'm Mason Cameron. Boys, we have to talk about a rough one last night. Extra brutal for myself. Not a great looking game all around for the national landscape to have to watch that one last night. Broncos, Raiders. Broncos, they make it out 10-7. It was not a pretty game. Ben, what did you make of that game there last night?
Yeah, it's about the only thing that came out of that game was I was on Raiders plus 8.5 and circa million. So escaped with a win there, but it was an ugly viewing experience. Right, and part of the reason I was on the Raiders was this Broncos offense. If you take out the games against the Bengals and the Cowboys, which are like the two outlier defenses in the NFL this year, it's been ugly. Right, they're one of the worst offenses in the NFL in terms of moving the ball down to down. The Raiders have actually been middle of the pack, slightly above average in DVOA and some metrics defensively. This is a defense that I think people are this defense is terrible, and I thought this defense was terrible, but by a lot of the numbers, they're not quite that bad. And you just saw the limitations of this Broncos offense last night. Bo Nix's accuracy being the primary one. A lot of downfield opportunities they just missed. The footwork is off. And the defense is very good, right? And I think the Raiders were moving the ball okay early in the game. Then they lost their two starting guards, and that was just a death sentence against this Broncos pass rush for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me, too, was also just we've talked about it quite a bit. It's something that we've talked about last week and the week before. And, Bo Nix's footwork, way off. And it's created this accuracy issue where he's one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in the NFL. And I actually saw a chart after the game last night where it was talking about percentage of passing opportunities that were missed due to inaccurate ball placement and how much yardage that could have equated to. And the air yardage was insane. He's in this chart way off by himself, worse than guys like Cam Ward, worse than a lot of the other quarterbacks that we, traditionally talk about as having struggled this year. And he was just head and shoulders way worse than the rest of them. And that's going to be something that they have to figure out, because this good record right now is not really indicative of what this team has looked like. Judah, what have you made from maybe this Broncos team? Were you surprised at all, or maybe even more impressed by what we've seen out of the Raiders defense last night? Or what was your takeaway from the game?
Yeah, I was kind of on many of the similar angles to Ben. I bet the Raiders on the spread here. Just Bo Nix has really done nothing against some of the worst defenses in the NFL, and the Raiders' run defense has been good all year, kind of forcing obvious passing situations. I also thought the Raiders, kind of with a healthy Brock Bowers, are an entirely different offense. Even their pass rates from week 1 to week 9 were much higher, given Bowers' full health. The Broncos kind of playing somewhat shorthanded. I thought the Raiders would be able to get some offense going. And the truth is they were obviously completely stagnant for the middle part of that game. And that was a disaster. But
there was no first downs for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was awful. But before then, they were moving the ball and they were getting destroyed by penalties. Right. A kind of off the play holding on a GT huge rush, and obviously the offensive pass interference that wiped away a touchdown. That the Raiders are I think should be a lot better than their results. But there is still a kind of clear tier gap to me between a Raiders offense and a Titans offense, let's say. And the Raiders are by no means good, but I think there's a pretty difference in caliber. And yeah, the Broncos have beaten up on a bunch of bad teams, and this is certainly in the range of performances for Bo Nix. I don't think this is a particularly great 8-2 team.
Yeah, no, and Mark in the chat here talking about, did Brock Bowers do something to Geno to make him completely avoid throwing him the ball? And Judah, you brought it up too, is that this offense looked incredibly good when they were feeding Brock Bowers the ball last week, and I thought this this Broncos defense has struggled a little bit with tight ends. I thought that if we were going to talk this game being a Raiders covering at 8.5, I was admittedly on the other side because I thought we were going to get into one of the ranges of more positive Broncos offensive progression and a defense that was going to play relatively well and sort of put this Raiders team behind the 8 ball per se. And if you were to tell me that they covered, I was thinking, oh, well, so Brock Bowers just absolutely erupted. But that wasn't really the case here, and it just sort of fell within that range of, negative game scripts for the Broncos, and frankly, it was just it was an ugly all-around game.
It's gonna be hard for the Raiders to get the ball to Brock Bowers when you can't hold on to the ball for more than 2.3 seconds because the defensive line's in the backfield. I mean, like that obviously just nuked the entirety of the Raiders' kind of downfield passing in addition to the wind. It was just kind of shocking to me. There was one situation where right after the interception, Raiders get get a first down on 2 runs, and like on first down there, everyone knows you're going to run the ball. Again, there's kind of this like false assumption of like, oh, I'm in field goal range, as though a 50-yard field goal, as we saw, is a guarantee. It's definitely not. It's like that's the play where you can like actually take a downfield shot and kind of go for the kill and the win. But they instead ran it a couple times and ended up missing the field goal.
Yeah, the first half, it's like I was begging the Raiders to pass the ball on first down. Just like you look at the Seahawks, the Colts, these offenses that are explosive on first down, they're passing on quote unquote run downs, right? The Raiders, that's in a situation where if the Broncos are expecting run, that's when you might not get the same pass rush. That's when you get the ball to Brock Bowers, right? And they just didn't do a ton of that in this game.
Yeah, that's become a lot more in vogue. I was talking to Dalton about this the other day, is that, I mean, it's always been a sort of a concept there, but playing in reverse where, you're throwing out of heavy personnel on running downs and you're, running out of light personnel on, third down and short and things like that. Those are becoming much more effective offensively for a lot of teams. And as the defense, it's making it very, very hard to match up. But obviously that's difficult to do with a lot of personnel, especially if you can't, trot out a bunch of tight ends and play heavy. The Raiders have 2 solid tight ends, so they could potentially do something like that, but, just not that creativity on the offense right there in that one. And, no more time needing to spend on this 7 to 10 Thursday night stinker that we all had to sit through and mourn after the fact. So, but of course, everybody, if you guys want to check it out, make sure you go get a PFF Plus subscription, and you can get those grades live now. And of course, use the promo code PFF NFL Show 25 to get 25% off of your PFF Plus subscription. Get access to our player prop tool, as well as the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. And remember, chat, get on the player prop tool. Throw us your favorite player prop bets in the chat, and we'll string them together and make a little parlay out of them at the end, and the winnings will go to charity. So make sure you guys drop those in. And boys, it's time to go into some game market bets. This was definitely a really, really interesting week. There's a lot of good matchups and a lot of really, there's going to be a lot of stuff that tells us a lot. So I'm really interested to see what you guys are leaning towards. I'm interested to talk about what I'm going to be targeting here. And Ben, let's just start with you right off the gate, because I really like what your lean is.
Yeah, let's go to Monday night, Packers-Eagles. I really like the Packers this week. -2.5. You get it under the field goal. It was -105, at least when I last looked at it. And this is a game where the Eagles have been taking bets. Like, the Eagles are getting 80 to 90% of the tickets, the money on this spread. It hasn't really moved. And I just think the matchup for the Packers defense against the Eagles offense lines up really well for Green Bay. Right? If you think about Green Bay's defense, what do well? They limit explosive pass plays. Right? And if you take away those vertical throws to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, for an Eagles offense that has not run the ball as well as they did last year. Yes, they had a good game against the Giants prior to the bye, but that's the Giants' run defense. That's one of the worst run defenses in the NFL this year. I don't necessarily think they're going to be able to do the same against Green Bay here. And Hurts really relies on those vertical throws. If you look at passes we chart as like vertical throw types, so over the shoulder, vertical lead, vertical back shoulder, that accounts for 35% of Jalen Hurts' passing yards this year. That's second highest in the NFL behind Sam Darnold. And the Packers allow the sixth lowest percentage of yards on those throws. They're first in explosive pass rate allowed. Right, so I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to pick up those chunk plays down the sideline to their receivers in kind of the same way that we've seen when they've had success. Games like that Minnesota game, right, where Jalen Hurts was able to attack downfield. That's something the Packers do a really good job of defending. And then on the other side of the ball, I do think this Eagles defense will probably look better over the back half of the year. They added some pieces at the trade deadline. You go out, you get Jalen Phillips. You get Michael Carter from the Jets. You get Jair Alexander. To be determined whether those corners really give you a ton. Like Jair Alexander wasn't playing on a Ravens defense that needed corners, right? So like maybe there's a turnaround here and he gets in the right situation and he gets a little bit healthier and he plays well. Maybe you play Michael Carter in the slot. You move Cooper DeJean outside. But then if that happens, right, you're losing what Cooper DeJean brings you in the slot if you're moving him to outside, right? This is kind of a thing we've seen across the NFL where these physical corners in the slot who can defend the run, who can tackle, who can blow up screens, those guys are valuable. You saw it with the Ravens defense when they moved Kyle Hamilton deep, like what they lost not having him in the slot, and now they trade for Alohi Gilman, they bring him back in the slot. Like I think there could be kind of a similar thing with Eugene here if that's what they end up doing. That being said, right, this is an Eagles defense that has not been as good as it was last year. They've been a little bit susceptible to the run. Right, I think the Packers will be able to get a little bit going on the ground in what's going to be, it looks like, a cold weather game in Lambeau. And then Jordan Love attacking downfield. Right, the other part of this is I prefer looking at the Packers when they're in a more competitive game like this compared to last week when they're coming as 2 touchdown favorites against Carolina. I think in those games, they tend to get a little bit too conservative. But in a game like this is where you see Jordan Love attacking downfield more. You see some more play action. The Tucker Kraft loss definitely hurts them. But Luke Musgrave, right, they at least have a highly drafted guy that can slot in there. It doesn't give you the same type of skill set as Kraft necessarily, but it is a talented guy. And the Eagles have struggled off play action. They're 30th in EPA per play allowed off play action this year. Packers are top 5. I just think this is a spot where the public is on Philadelphia, but this is still a Green Bay team that I think is among the best in the NFC, even though they've been super up and down, and the results have been inconsistent against lesser teams specifically.
Yeah, and you brought up that note that when they play with these really big spreads, they've had some enormous spreads. 12.5 against Carolina, 14 against Cincinnati, 6.5 against on the road and in Arizona. That's really been their MO, is to have a lot of these big spreads. But when you really do bring those within that field goal range, they're 3-0 against the spread. So that's definitely a good mark. Judah, are you seeing anything with this high key matchup, this prime time marquee heavyweight bout?
Yeah, I think I am with Ben here for the most part on Green Bay. I also think there's a nice tails case here in talk about the difference of Philadelphia from last year to this year is they were not allowing deep attempts at all, and no one was beating them from an explosive perspective, and they're allowing the highest percentage of deep throws. That's obviously an area where Green Bay has liked to attack with Jordan Love kind of throughout his career. And you bring up like losing Tucker Kraft is obviously a big loss, but this is still a Packers team that even beyond Musgrave just has a ton of depth. We'll see what happens with Christian Watson. I think I assume he's going to play, right, limited with a knee injury, but I think that's like a huge vertical piece in this game. I assume Nolan Smith is not going to return this week. He was designated to return. I think that's probably the biggest asset almost that the Eagles are going to get back. And like if you're not going to be able to generate much of a pass rush here, and I don't think they're going to be able to without him, I think that kind of fits in perfectly with how Green Bay wants to attack, which is run the ball, pretty successfully against an Eagles front, and then take some shots downfield, and then add on the fact that this is a pass rush which can absolutely get home to Hurts, and you force him into a lot of these obvious passing situations where he's struggled, and even this offensive line has not been as good as they have been in years past. And I think you can kind of see the game script in which Green Bay is really playing from ahead, running, throwing deep, and letting the pass rush tee off.
Yeah, I could definitely see it happening. And Mark in the chat here is liking Musgrave at +4 or 4+ receptions is one that intrigues him. Ben, any insight on that one?
Yeah, I like that one too, right? The targets have to go somewhere. I think Musgrave has a chance to pick up a bigger role. I probably prefer the kind of field stretching receivers, like going for yardage with something like Watson, like Judah was talking about. But don't hate Musgrave, 4+ receptions either.
Yeah, definitely has to go somewhere. And when we, talk about how Tucker Kraft was getting a lot of his production, they weren't really too many downfield throws. There were a lot of times where he would just get these little outlets and just rumble for massive amounts of yardage. So I definitely think that there is some potential there for some underneath guys too as well.
Musgrave a little bit different than Kraft in that, like, he is kind of more of a vertical tight end, right? So I actually might prefer Musgrave yards. I don't know what the line is at to receptions, like hoping you get some more of those seam balls or whatever it is with him stretching the field. Whereas Kraft, he can do that stuff, but he's more of the, like, George Kittle run through a guy's face after the catch type of guy, which Musgrave I don't think necessarily is.
Those guys get you juiced up.
They do get you juiced up.
The
Tucker Kraft injury is brutal.
It's brutal for the football world because he's just fun to watch. So
it's also brutal for me, who I have a Tucker Kraft leads the NFL in touchdown receptions slip that was, like, not that far off. He was one behind the league lead.
Oof. That's a tough break there. So, Judah, we'll head over into your game market bet. And this one's looking like it might be a bit of a stinker, but I like the angle you're taking on it, Judah. Tell us which way you're leaning with that one.
I have to come clean first, which is that I actually found last night's game to be incredibly entertaining in the kind of worst possible way.
Sicko ball. I love the sicko ball.
Usually these sorts of games frustrate me. But there was something about last night, with punters. I thought that the Broncos punter was going to miss a ball at one point. Like, that was just in the card. It's crazy things happening.
Yeah, the first half there was about as big a punter mismatch as you'll ever see in your life.
It was special. But I'm attacking a game which I think could be similarly ugly, and that's Houston against Jacksonville. And I'm going to take Houston's money line here. I think that when you look at the Jaguars offense, we've talked about Trevor Lawrence. He just has not been producing at a clip, I think, really, certainly I didn't expect. And it seems like the past couple of years, which could have been chalked up to injuries as he was dealing with a lot, were actually probably the signal and not the noise. And the aberration was kind of the second half of 2022 and a little bit of 2023. And this is just a terrible matchup, I think, for the Jacksonville offense. Houston is number one in perfect coverage rate. Jacksonville has been forcing a ton of coverage mistakes, and on plays in which they don't force those coverage mistakes, when Trevor Lawrence is forced to face perfect coverage, he's bottom 5 in the NFL by PFF grade, by EPA play, however you want to chart it. And now he's going to be down kind of two of his key receivers. And yes, Brian Thomas has been a disappointment, but still going from Brian Thomas down the depth chart here, I think is going to make a pretty big difference. And you look at also, this is a Houston pass rush, which has been generating a ton of pressure. They're top 5 in basically any pressure rate, any pressure metric you want to use: quick pressure, pressure disruption, pressure rate, all of the above there. And I think they can kind of force a ton of trouble. And Trevor Lawrence his pressure to sack rate over the last month has skyrocketed. He's been holding onto the ball for a lot longer. His average time to throw kind of the first 5 weeks of the season was something like 2.7, 2.8. And that number has kind of gotten closer to 3 over the last bunch of months. He's holding onto the ball for a very long time. And I think that's kind of a recipe for disaster. Yes, you look on the flip side of the ball, and like Davis Mills, we don't have a ton of data on Davis Mills, kind of in this current Texan system. A lot of his numbers obviously predate the Stroud years. So we're talking 3-4 years ago. So we have to, I think, have some humility there. But what we do know of Mills is that he's going to be a situation-dependent quarterback. He's not a guy who's going to scramble a ton. And the Jaguars' pass rush does worry me to some extent, given the state of the Texans' offensive line. But this is also not an elite unit, and this is a coverage unit which has really been getting kind of beaten up over the last bunch of weeks. Also talk about perfect coverage. They're bottom 5 over the last 6 weeks or so. I do think there's a path towards kind of Houston moving the ball. It's certainly a bit more so than the reverse. So it's an ugly game, but Texans as a home dog here, I think, is a little bit mispriced.
Yeah, and I lean there with you too. I ended up getting off of the sicko ball headspace last night. I was this close to taking the under at 37.5 because it just intrigues me when, it's like you said, when we talk about this Jaguars offense, every solid defense they've played, they've really just laid some goose eggs outside of maybe that Kansas City game where, maybe the primetime lights and some juice and energy in there and thinking that they could take it to a Chiefs team that had sort of been struggling up to that point a little bit. Obviously they've, hit the gas and really been incredible over the last handful of weeks. But, we talk about the Seahawks, they scored 12, the Rams 35-7 in that game, and it's just really not been super pretty. The last time these two teams played, it was 17-10, and they really barely squeaked out that win, and they were playing a lot better, and that was also due to, like you said, a lot of this coverage unit for the Jags has not been as good. They've not been very good at all, and a lot of what their early season success was those high variance, turnovers, where they were leading the NFL by a wide margin. And, we talked about it at the time is that those numbers aren't sustainable. And so, it really makes sense. And then, you also said it too. This Texans offensive line is struggling. I have some reservations on what we're going to see with Davis Mills there, but I do like your angle. Somebody has to win this game. And I think, you can give that home nod to the Texans there where they can at least show some efficiency. Ben, do you see anything else in this one that we missed?
Yeah, this one's just stay away for me. I don't want either side in this game. Judah's points completely valid on the Jaguars offense against the Texans defense. Like, I'm not expecting a whole lot. Maybe we see them be able to run the ball a little bit. Houston's run defense hasn't been quite as good as his pass defense. The Jaguars were able to get something going on the ground last week against the Raiders. Like, that looked pretty good with ETN for a lot of that game. But it's the other side that just keeps me from betting Houston. Davis Mills, yes, the sample that we're taking from Davis Mills is largely a few years old, but EPA per pressure dropback over the last 5 seasons among quarterbacks with at least 250 dropbacks, the bottom 3 is Zach Wilson, Deshaun Watson on the Browns, and Davis Mills. Right, and now you're putting him behind a Houston offensive line that was already bad, and it looks like Titus Howard, the right tackle, is going to be out. It looks like Ed Ingram, the right guard, might be out. So you've got 2 backup offensive linemen on one of the worst offensive lines in the league against a competent pass rush on a team that can't run the ball. So, I know the total is really low at 37.5, but it might not be low enough for this game, honestly.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal one, and like I said, I came off of it because it's a little too sicko for me, I think, at a certain point. But yes, I agree. At 37.5, it may not be low enough too. That's going to be a game you do not see pop up on Red Zone very often. That's for sure. So that heads up into another one that might pop up on Red Zone a little bit that I'm going to be talking about here. Ben, I know you have an angle that I'm excited to hear about as well, but I'm going to be talking about this Baltimore offense against the Vikings here. When we see how different this team has operated, this Ravens team has operated when they have Lamar Jackson under center, it has been absolutely incredible. These are 2 different teams. So I'm going to be on the over for Baltimore's team total at 26.5. You could even potentially move that up to 27.5. I like it right there too. You're going to get plus money on that side as well. But Lamar Jackson on the field. This team is top 10 in EPA, top 8 in so many of these different metrics that we love to talk about for offensive efficiency. EPA per play, they're 6th. Early down success rate, they're 6th. Third down conversion rate, 8th. explosive pass play percentage, third, touchdown drive percentage, second. They're scoring touchdowns on 36% of their drives when Lamar Jackson is on the field. That is proof, and this is something we've talked about, especially when this guy has been, in the running for MVPs and winning MVPs and things like that. It's performances like that that really do shine through as why this team is as good as they are when he is on the field. And then when you take him off of the field, now obviously any team, you go to your backup quarterback, your offense is probably going to struggle a little bit, but this offense absolutely plummets when he is not on the field. They are bottom 5 in so many different metrics that it is just obscene. 30th in EPA, early down success rate 31st, conversion rate 26th. They become dead last in explosive pass play percentage at 32, or at dead last, obviously. And then their touchdown drive percentage, it plummets. It plummets in half, 15%. They're 28th in that metric. So it's one of those things where I'm really excited to see how he can flourish. It's something that we talk about too, and this is going to be a similar, angle that we saw play out with that Chargers game a couple weeks ago, where I think that we see Lamar Jackson, he is going to be able to sort of game the Vikings blitz packages here. Vikings obviously blitz at the highest rate in the NFL, and Lamar himself, he's third in passing grade versus the blitz. Similar situation to that game that we saw with Herbert a few weeks ago. And I mean, he diced them up for, I think it was like 190 before the end of the half, and then they just started running the ball. So, when they're not getting pressure, the Vikings have struggled a little bit in EPA. They go to sort of passing success rate. They go sort of right to the middle of the pack, right below league average, which is very different than when they are getting pressure, where they look like one of the best passing defenses in the NFL. And when we talk about Lamar, in those games that he has played, this offense has been able to score over this amount in 4 of those in those 5 games. So, I'm really excited to see what they have there. I'm also leaning towards the 4. I would have liked it a little bit better lower, particularly on the road, but we've seen some improvements from that defense as well. I'm still not really sold on the J.J. McCarthy thing. I know this, that was something that we talked about last week when I took the under on the 215.5 passing yards, and I mean, he had 126, and, at times it looked like he had some things figured out, but at other times it really looked like, again, one of these guys who just hasn't quite figured it out. So I do like the lean at -4 as well, but I'm definitely loving the team total at 28.5. Ben, I know you have an angle on this game as well, which we'll get into in a second, but what's your take on this Ravens team and this matchup in particular?
Yeah, I honestly think I lean the spread a little bit more than the Ravens team total over in this game, and that's partially just like kind of selling the Vikings offense and McCarthy. They were still, I think it was bottom 5 in the NFL last week in passing success rate among the teams that played. Like, yes, McCarthy made some nice throws, especially to close out the game to Naylor. But I'm not 100% sold on it yet. And with the Ravens offense, I think honestly it's going to come down to like whether the Vikings are able to generate pressure. Because like you said, Lamar's been very good against the blitz this year. Throughout a lot of his career, right? With him on the field, they're 3rd in yards per dropback against the blitz. But under pressure, Lamar's not been great this year, right? He's taken a lot of sacks, 17 sacks taken on 64 pressure dropbacks this year. Right? That's typically something that you don't see from Lamar Jackson. So I'm not going to say that that's going to continue, but it is something that we've seen to this point this year. He's 32nd out of 32 qualifiers in passing grade against pressure this year. So, like, if the Vikings are able to get home, like, I think they can impact them. But I like the Ravens' ability to run on this Vikings defense, which, if we just want to jump into my player prop for the week, it's Derrick Henry, 80-plus rushing yards at +100. And if you look at the running backs who have had success against Minnesota this year, Quinshon Judkins, 23 carries for 110 yards. Kamani Vidal, 23 for 117. Bijan, 22 for 143. Kenneth Gainwell, 19 for 99. Like, the common thread between all of those offenses, the Browns, the Chargers, the Falcons, the Steelers, they want to get heavy and bully your defensive line. Right? And the Vikings brought in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave this year on the defensive line to potentially to beef up that unit, right, and to give them a little bit more interior pass rush. But what we've seen is they've been getting moved off the ball in the run game with these teams specifically who can get heavy, and that's what the Ravens want to do. both Allen and Hargrave have run defense grades below 50 this year. And the Ravens are one of the run-heaviest offenses in the NFL. I think there's potential for McCarthy to kill drives in this game, right? Have short drives, have turnovers. So I think you're going to get play volume for Baltimore, and I think they're going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry a lot in a matchup where they can have some success getting heavier with a guy like Patrick Ricard back in this offense. So I like Henry rushing props this week.
Yeah. No, and I definitely like your angle on that one as well, and that is part of sort of where my lean for the Baltimore team over is going to be. I think that this team, when we talk about the Vikings on defense, a lot of their fun blitzes and their, that sort of comes into play with their passing defense. And that's where most of the national media sort of talks about them. But they have to blitz against the run in order to really be able to fit, because they're just not doing very well up front to fill gaps and because of the things that you said there. And I think that's going to sort of put them on the back foot when they're trying to defend against some of these passing situations. And, you mentioned it. When Lamar is pressured, he's had a lot of struggles. One of the things that he's actually a little bit better when they're blitzing, when they're sending 5 or more, and he's left clean. When he's pressured off of a blitz, it's a little bit better than worse when they're, rushing 4 and getting after him. That's really where he's struggled a little bit more. So I definitely do agree with you in that regard that it's going to be an interesting matchup, and I really like where the running game is headed with that one. Judah, do you see anything else in this matchup that we might have missed here? Or which way are you maybe leaning with this? Are you sold on J.J. McCarthy? What are you liking here?
Definitely not sold on J.J. McCarthy. Maybe sold on...
selling J.J. McCarthy.
Selling on J.J. McCarthy. I think the market is pretty calibrated to that. This is a Ravens team that is a 4-point road favorite here. I do agree with Ben's angles. I think 27.5 or 26.5, still a lot of points, and there are some questions with the Ravens' ability to move the ball on a Minnesota defense, which over the last 2 years has been great, but over the last month has been kind of getting destroyed. They've obviously gotten a little bit healthier there on defense. I think kind of looking at Henry makes a ton of sense, and I think how the Ravens are looking to play. It's going to be interesting how much the Vikings respect Lamar Jackson via the run. He really did not look healthy last week running the ball. You would assume he still pulls some gravity, but it's also possible that the game plan is almost daring Jackson to run given his injury. So that's something I'll be watching, but not a kind of side I want to be betting, but I do like the Henry call out given the matchup.
Yeah, definitely like that. And another just interesting thing with this Ravens defense is we talked about it a little bit earlier since they moved Kyle Hamilton up into the slot. He's not just playing the slot for them too. So this does sort of make an extra lean for what you guys are saying with the angle at Ravens -4 there. This defense has been a lot better. They're top 5 to 10 in EPA and success rate allowed since they moved Kyle Hamilton into the slot. And it's not just because he's in the slot. He's in the box. He's playing. He's blitzing. He's not only their best safety, he's their best linebacker. He's their best pass rusher right now. That is the versatility that has made this defense so much more effective. And like you said, when you have that guy up closer to the line of scrimmage who can really dictate and dominate where his matchups are, that's really helped this defense to play a lot better. So I do like where your guys' head's at on that one as well.
Yeah, and we probably should point out through this conversation that the Vikings defense was very good against the Lions last week. We've kind of been saying the Vikings defense has been vulnerable, but they looked awesome last week, right? I'm just kind of not necessarily saying that's what it's going to look like week in and week out from here.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the point in saying there's some variance on the Ravens side of things, but also on just very quickly at the Lions offense hasn't been so great over the last 6 weeks, but we might have to talk about that for next week.
Jared Goff versus pressure has definitely been a glaring thing as well. He's definitely looks a little bit more like a statue back there when people are bearing down on him. So that is definitely something that is worth watching as we move forward into the year. But now we're going to head into some prop markets, boys. I like a lot of the angles that we're talking about here. I know Ben has a couple of great reads. So make sure you guys also go check out, our best bets over on PFF.com. We write up some of our favorite prop bets from the PFF player prop tool, which you guys can get access to. Make sure you guys go get your PFF Plus subscriptions. Obviously, promo code PFF NFL Show 25. That's how you get access to the app, and you can get all the data in there, as well as all the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. And a reminder, everybody, go put your favorite prop bets in the chat, and we will parlay them together at the end of the show. Gordon in the chat, he's been itching for a winner. So you guys go drop your props for us, and we will parlay them together for a parlay that'll go to charity. So let's start off with Judah. Judah, tell us what you're targeting here in the prop market this week.
Yeah, I'm looking at Justin Herbert over 23.5 rushing yards. And this is really kind of one, or I guess two angles. Number one, Justin Herbert has changed his scramble rates. I mean, his offensive line has just been absolutely decimated by injury. And you'd kind of think that Herbert would, and the Chargers would kind of adjust by throwing a ton of quick passes. That has not been the case at all. In fact, the quick pass rate has gone down. Herbert is just scrambling a huge amount. He did not have a single game through the first 6 weeks of the season above like a 15-20% scramble rate. And over the last 3 weeks, we're talking 23%, 43%, 26% scramble rate. And then by scramble rate here, I don't mean plays that cross the line of scrimmage. Scramble rate is anytime you begin the actual process of scrambling. This is something that PFF charts. So we can also kind of break down within the scrambles, how often is the quarterback taking a sack? Is he passing? Is he rushing? And that rush number is also up a tremendous amount to something closer to 30% over the last bunch of weeks relative to something closer to 10% over the first half and even previous to Herbert's career. You add on the fact that this is a Pittsburgh team which plays a ton of man, traditionally an area where quarterbacks have more success running, and the fact that this is a unbelievable kind of mismatch right now, given the state of the Chargers offensive line. And finally, I think the Pittsburgh defensive line emerging a bit their second and quick pressure rate over the last month, and obviously have all the talent in the world there with TJ Watt playing a lot better as well. So add up all those angles. I think this is a spot where Herbert is going to be looking to take off and run. And he is, when you're pricing the medians of how this has gone kind of for the full season, I don't think it's properly accounting for both the injury and play style change that Herbert's made over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and just the production's been there. I mean, he's only gone under that line twice this season. So this is something that, in just watching the games, you can tell that he feels like he's running for his life, and especially just how they've been giving up pressure, and what we saw from Pittsburgh's defense, who they were much more improved at getting after the quarterback this past week. So that's going to be something definitely worth watching. Ben, do you see anything in that one as well?
Yeah, I like it. To all of the points that Judah made, Herbert's been running a lot more, should be under pressure a ton, and in those situations he has not hesitated to take off. And not just take off, not just hang back and wait for 3 seconds and then take off for 2 yards. It's like if there's a gap in a second and a half, 2 seconds, he's taking it, right? So I think that's where you get even more yardage upside when you get those early scrambles with clear lanes as opposed to late scrambles when guys are already kind of rallying to him.
Yeah, and Walt in the chat. Walt, don't wish this evil on us. Walt says Herbert going to end up with a high ankle sprain with that offensive line. Don't wish that evil on us, Walt. We're here to make some money.
Joe Alt has already hit the quota for high ankle sprains.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Some brutal ones there as well. So definitely going to be an interesting one to watch, and I like the angle there too. Ben, go ahead and tell us what prop you're leaning towards this week.
I already did with Derrick Henry.
Oh, yeah.
But I like
with
your
the Derrick
prop.
Henry. Yeah, there we go. You know what? I totally spaced because, we already talked about that game. Derrick Henry, you guys, go take him over 70 yards. Or 77? What was the line?
I just took 80 plus.
Oh, you took 80 plus.
Yeah.
80 plus at even money, boys. That's some winner right there. Okay. For myself, though, I'm going to take a rushing prop as well. And this is a game that looks like it might have a little bit of weather as we have a winter storm sort of hitting into the East Coast here. I'm liking Kyle Monangai to go over 40.5 rushing yards. And the big thing here is, we saw him explode this past week. But what I've also seen is that it's not just the 26 attempts and 176 yards with, 118 after contact when Swift isn't in the lineup. It's that he's been getting much more of this workload as the season's gone on. Through weeks 1 through 6, it was just 23% of share of the carries. And over weeks 7 and 8, so throw out the game where Swift wasn't active, it's up to 39%. So we're seeing a much more positive shift towards an even backfield share. And this number for 40.5 is very, very attainable when we talk about how much this team has struggled and really just how much Kyle Monangai has been very, very efficient and frankly outpacing DeAndre Swift in a lot of these metrics. Monangai in yards per carry, 5.3. That's actually 4th in the NFL among running backs with 50 or more carries. And Swift, 4.6. So not terrible, but quite a bit better for Monangai. Missed tackles forced per attempt. That's another story. He's more than doubling him there at 0.24 versus Swift's 0.11. And then yards after contact per attempt, which I think is going to be a big one here against this Giants defense who has really struggled to tackle, who's really struggled to fit the run. 3.3 yards after carry per attempt to Swift's 2.4. So I think eventually you're going to see Monangai take obviously a bigger share of this workload, more of an even share of this workload, because I think Ben Johnson is seeing what he saw in the guy when they drafted him in the 7th round and said, hey, this can be a guy. This is why we're okay waiting in a class that was very deep on running back and taking this guy a lot later. He runs angry. And you know what? He showed a little bit of shiftiness last week that I don't think we had. But when we talk about how bad this Giants defense has been against the run, it's quite literally horrendous. They're 32nd in EPA per rush allowed. The only team they're worse than was the they're worse than the Cincinnati defense that they just gashed this past week. So I'm, in on that. This Giants defense also 29th in rushing success rate, 32nd in explosive runs allowed. They're at 16.4%. No other team is above 15%. So this is something where I think we can see a lot of rushing production regardless of who's running the ball. And I think there's going to be plenty to go around. And when you can get this line at 40.5, I'm definitely still in on Monangai. And yards per carry is another one there. 5.4 on running back carries there. That's 31st in the NFL. And a big reason why we've seen this Chicago team be resurgent and play these close games and win a lot of them is because they've been more effective and efficient in the run. Since week 3, this team is 2nd in EPA per rush behind only Indy. And this is a team we've talked about with Indy who runs the ball particularly well, better than some teams throw the ball. And the Bears are getting right there into that range as well. And they're also 1st in explosive run percentage. So I am leaning on the Kyle Monangai over at 40.5 rushing yards. I think that everybody's going to eat against this Giants defense. And with a little bit of weather possibly bearing in there, a little bit of wind, it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. Ben, I know you have another angle as well that you've written about with some Odunze lines. What are you thinking about this Kyle Monangai line? And tell us a little bit about that Odunze angle that you're taking as well.
Yeah, no, I already bet Monangai as well. I don't need to add a ton, right? The Giants bad against the run. The Bears have been run heavy the last couple weeks. They've also been much better running the ball coming out of the bye. I think Monangai has a good chance of getting 10 carries in this game, even with Swift coming back, potentially Roshan coming back. Like I think they trust him to carry more of a load, especially after last week. And it's like not all that dissimilar matchup. So if he gets 10 carries, like I think he clears this number. And then I also like Odunze, right? The weather, not necessarily ideal, it looks like. But Odunze's coming off a 0-catch game against Cincinnati. I think this matchup sets up more closely to the Baltimore game 2 weeks ago where he had over 100 receiving yards. It's a team that plays more man coverage on pass plays than any defense in the NFL. Odunze is their top guy versus man. Their cornerback situation is not great, right? They might be a little bit healthier than they were last week against San Francisco, but these are matchups that Odunze can win. And I think you're going to see him go back to being their primary option in the passing game, and I think he has some big play potential against this defense.
Yeah, I definitely like that, Ter. Judah, are you seeing anything in this one?
Yeah, I mean, the Monungai stuff I think is the case speaks for itself. I prefer the alts just because I think there's a real chance he has something like a 70-30 split. That's an SGP I'm interested in. And Odunze, I mean, same exact angle effectively of why I was on him 2 weeks ago against Baltimore and exactly what Ben just outlined.
Yeah, I really like it too. And we're going to head into some real money-making opportunities, like Judah just said, some SGP angles. But first, we have to talk about Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set up our kids for success in the future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Funds can be used on nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use the funds for their first home, a new car, or even to start a business. And while your kids can't invest while they're minors, a UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments more time to grow. It's all online, and setting up an account could take you just 5 minutes. Get started investing with as little as $1 a day, and then manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investments are subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. Boys, we get to the fun part of the show. I know that this is, we clock in to do the game market and the prop, but this is where we have the most fun. I know we do. Judah's already got a smile. Judah, tell us what same game parlay angles you're taking. And of course, you guys, if you're not over on PFF.com, Judah writes up a bunch of these every single week, so go make sure you check out his work. Judah, tell us which ones you're tailing here.
Yeah, I feel like we need another, 70-1 like we got a couple months ago. And I think the line, unfortunately, has moved to 70-1 from 90-1, what I'm about to say. But these things fluctuate, and I still like it at 70-1. Look, I'm a sicko. This is just, the smiles on my face from that. And I'm going back to the well. I have bet this version a bunch of times this season. It did hit. It's not one I discussed, but it did hit against Cincinnati. And that is betting on Justin Fields to throw a bunch of passes, some yards, and the Jets to win the game. And going back to the well here, we got Fields 260, passing 32 attempts, Jets -1.5. When I put this in a run sheet, it was 90-1, 70-1 currently. But the case here, I think, is a couple-fold. Number one, the Browns are a huge pass funnel in the sense, if you want to look at EPA per play, you want to look at success rate. If you want to take the difference of those two things, they're top three, meaning they are far easier to pass against than run against. You look at the Jets, by the way, their pass rate's over expected the last month or so. We've got 2 games where they've been actually positive expectation passing. So this, yes, obviously there's plenty of kind of mass in a game in which the Jets run the ball a lot, but this is a matchup which does tilt towards the pass, and it's not as though they haven't shown a even tendency to throw, which they've done in half their games. Then you want to look at the matchup. The Browns' defense has been far, far worse on the road than at home. This has basically been true every year that Jim Schwartz started out. This is the stat I would typically kind of avoid from and say it's a small sample, but we've got, I think, a pretty large sample of that to say I don't think it's noise. And this is at home. The Browns are like negative 0.23 EVA per play. That's like the best in the NFL or up there kind of every year. And on the road, they are a lot closer to league average. And you want to talk about the kind of more intricate matchup. This is a team which is playing a lot of man coverage. Justin Fields has got a 0.2 EPA per play difference between man and zone coverage. far, far better against man. It's also going to invite the single high stuff. It's going to invite the sorts of explosive plays that are necessary, I think, for Fields to clear these alt yard numbers. And you've got a Browns man team, a defense that is a lot worse on the road for what it's worth in the last month. They're like top 5 in yards per attempt allowed. And you add in the fact of the Browns matchup kind of forcing or tilting the Jets towards the pass. And not that much needs to go right. 260 yards, not that many yards. 32 attempts, not that many attempts. And the Jets to win in what started as a 50-50 game, I don't think is so unreasonable.
Yeah, in the news from the Jets, all these defenders gone. It's going to be, but they have all these offensive pieces still. Those are still in place where, this could end up being a game where, it's probably far less likely that we see a lot of Browns success on offense, but with the Jets defense who's obviously down.
Mason, you can't tell me this game is going to shoot out.
No. I'm not going to tell you this game is going to shoot out. I'm not. This one might be one of the ugly games of the week too. The total on this one's like 37.5 also, and that one's definitely looking like an under as well. But it is one of those things that they're going to be in range of this game. They're going to need to throw the ball around a little bit, and I do agree with the things that Judah said, where Fields has shown some ability to do this at times, and it's been few and far between, but these are low numbers. These are not high numbers. So it's definitely doable. Are you seeing anything? You have any lean or angle or thought on that one, Ben?
I think we need to have an intervention for Judah with Justin Fields. No, I think the key sentence you said there was it hit against the Bengals. Like, I know the Browns defense has been worse on the road, but I honestly think like a pass funnel defense situation against the Jets is not conducive to Fields passing. Like, I think the Jets offense, when they're able to run the ball, like that's probably when you see a little bit more Fields passing. Like, if they can't run the ball and you get Fields into these obvious drop back situations against the pass rush as good as Cleveland's, it's just not something that I have a ton of interest in. But like, yeah, I've done this many times, right? It's there, not much has to go right. 260 yards, 32 attempts, Jets to win by 2, right? That is something that looks very attainable. I just don't trust Justin Fields in these situations.
I'm excited for the clip in 2 days from now of Ben just saying we need an intervention, and then just Justin Fields tearing apart the Browns defense. I'm excited
for your sake.
That will be my biggest win of the season.
Yeah.
Just that clip.
Beckett's in the chat. Beckett, go ahead and clip that for the PFF betting Twitter, and we'll have that one in the chamber. Beckett's calling this one the Quinshon Judkins game. And I could definitely see that as well. Definitely going to be an interesting one. Ben, let's go over to you. Tell us what your same game parlay line is for this one. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit shocked to see it, but I do like the angle you're sort of taking here. Tell us where you're headed with this one.
Yeah, like the Falcons offense has not been consistent at all. Like, the Falcons have been one of the more mercurial teams in the NFL. Blowouts to the Panthers, blowout to the Dolphins, loss. Like, then they come back, they demolish the Bills, they play the Patriots to 1 point in New England last week. They've been very up and down, right? I think this is a game where they have a shot in Berlin against the Colts in the early game. And a lot of the angle here. So the same game parlay is Bijan 120 plus rushing, Kyle Pitts 80 plus receiving, Falcons money line. That is 65-1. And part of this is DeForest Buckner's out, right? He's not traveling with the team. He's out for this week. And I think that is a very significant hit to their run defense. If you look at the guys behind him, Adebawore, who they drafted a couple years ago, he was kind of a tweener. Like, he's 280 pounds. He hasn't graded well against the run. Neville Gallimore, who hasn't graded well against the run throughout his career. Like, I think that is a significant downgrade in the middle of their defensive line against the Falcons team that wants to run the ball. Hasn't always done it effectively, certainly hasn't the last couple weeks, but we've seen it this year where they have. And when DeForest Buckner was out, he was out for a stretch kind of early to mid last season. You saw some big rushing performances against the Colts. Josh Jacobs, 29 for 142. Tank Bigsby, 13 for 101. Achane and Mostert combined for 26 for about 130 yards. Tony Pollard 17 for 93. So like I do think this is a Colts run defense that is softer without DeForest Buckner, and we've seen Bijan have these ceiling type games already this season. And then the Kyle Pitts part of it is the Colts have allowed the second most receiving yards in the NFL to tight ends, behind only the Bengals, right? And with Sauce Gardner coming over to the Colts, expect him to play this week. Like, it's short week. He just got traded there. Who knows how effective he's going to be? But assuming he's going to be on Drake London in this game. And I don't know what's going on with Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney has not done anything at all since coming back from injury. So I think, like, if Gardner is taking away London, Pitts becomes their top weapon in a matchup where the Colts have struggled defending tight ends. So I think there's upside for both of those guys. And I think there's upside for Atlanta to win. All right, yes, the Colts game last week was kind of fluky. I was on the Colts. Judah was on the Colts. You were probably on the Colts. We were all on the Colts. 6 turnovers. They lost by 7. All right, so if you just look at success rates, they still outplayed the Steelers. There's just some variance there. I still believe in this Colts offense. But we're not that far removed from saying, like, this is a really good Falcons defense. And it hasn't always looked like that. But they are expected to get Zach Harrison back, Billy Bowman back this week, which are 2 starters. Zach Harrison has been a key piece of their D-line. So I think there's some upside for the Falcons to have a big offensive game, specifically flowing through Bijan and Kyle Pitts, and the Falcons to pull off an upset here.
Yeah, and you talk about the Darnell Mooney thing. I was very nearly on some Darnell Mooney props and sort of came off of those just because it's been really difficult. He's not really separating at a very high rate. So I think that does lean to what you've been saying with Kyle Pitts. This is a very attainable line at 80+. He's been getting more volume. He's going to be the guy that I think you see. And, sort of the indication of what we're sort of seeing, I know that Dalton talked about this a bit on the preview show on Wednesday, was that if Sauce is ready to go, they're going to play him, and sort of the easiest way that you can get him acclimated to the system is not asking him to do, the whole playbook and just essentially letting him shadow Drake London, who has been sort of the driving force behind their passing offense this year. And, it is something that we talked about a couple weeks ago when I was on some Bijan props as well and on this Atlanta team, is that this team just does not play very well unless they're running the ball significantly. And this is what that is telling the story of, is that this Atlanta team is going to be able to run the football and figure that out. And that gives them that ability to cover on the money line. And at 65-1, I mean, it's a pretty good read there. Jude, are you seeing anything in this one?
I like the first 2 angles. I don't like the Falcons addition there that I think is priced in as very correlated. And I see those 2 as like, that can also happen in a game script in which the Colts offense is doing Colts offense things. So I don't hate I like those 2 angles. And I think even the kind of inverse correlation there makes sense. I don't love the addition of the Falcons money line.
Can definitely see it. We're going to move on to my own one, which is another team that we talked about last week, which I took a bit of a burner on there. I thought I had that New England -5.5. It didn't end up working out. But we're going New England, Tampa Bay. I've got a 60-1 parlay here. We're going Tez Johnson, 80+ receiving yards, anytime touchdown. We're going Pop Douglas, 80+ receiving yards, anytime touchdown. 2 pass funnel defenses, bottom 12 in passing success rate allowed, and then top 12 in explosive pass percentage for both of these offense. And I'm expecting to see some pretty significant passing volumes from both of these teams. Now, we talked about it. Tampa Bay has been a little bit better at limiting the explosives, but I think we've still seen New England. They're confident to try to press the ball down the field. I think Drake May has been playing extremely well. And when we see some of the production that they've had, it's been from Pop Douglas. Pop Douglas runs these double moves and he gets guys moving in the wrong direction. And I think they're going to be able to take a couple shots with Pop in this one as well. Tez, for him, he's going to be stepping into, or we'll start with Pop actually. No Kayshon Boutte, and they've just been far more involved as a deep threat through the last few weeks. He's the highest graded receiver on this team since week 6 at a 94.7. Over that span, 2 games of 100+ and a touchdown, 8.2 yards after contact per reception. That's 5th among receivers over that span. And that's going to come in handy against Tampa Bay, who's allowing the 6th most yards after catch per reception, 6th most yards after catch total in the NFL this season. And I mean, we've been seeing Pop really gash one high defenses. We know that Tampa, they like to start in one high. They sort of move around. But when we see Pop, 7.53 yards per reception against close coverages, against one highs. So I think that that's definitely going to be an angle there. And then when we talk about Tez steps in as the wide receiver too, next to Igbuka. Still no Chris Godwin, still no Bucky Irving. We know Tampa loves that deep ball, and they're going to be able to hit it against New England's 29th ranked explosive pass percentage allowed. And Tez is also just another receiver that's been much more involved in this offense over the last 4 games. Second most routes run and targets. And we know that he's getting some quality looks here where not just deep balls, but balls where he can sort of, use his athleticism, run horizontally across the field, take screens, things like that. 18.2 target percentage, 25% deep target percentage, 12.3 average depth per target. He hasn't hit 80 yet this season, but he's notched some explosive plays and a pair of touchdowns. I really like his ability to sort of facilitate that one as well. Anything that you're seeing on that matchup, Ben?
Yeah, I like the Tez call, and I do think there's going to be a lot of passing. Honestly, my favorite angle in this game is Travion Henderson receiving. They've used him in the passing game a decent amount the last couple of weeks. This is a Tampa Bay defense that has really struggled against running backs out of the backfield, especially giving up big plays, right? They haven't done a good job of rallying to the ball and the flat and things like that, and Henderson is a guy who has big playability if you get him the ball out in space. Kind of on the edge of the field. So his line, I actually just bet it as Mason was talking right here. It's 21.5. I was looking for it earlier. I saw it was out, 21.5 yards. And I honestly like alts for Travion Henderson receiving this week as well.
Like it. Judah, anything you see with that matchup?
No, I think you kind of hit on the intriguing pieces to this in terms of the explosive elements, and the Bucs defense has struggled a bit over the last kind of 6 weeks of the season. May obviously has been playing kind of out of his mind here. I'm just waiting for the game in which he actually throws 32, 34, 36 times. Actually get him some volume numbers, and I think that this is a possible look for that.
Yeah, I definitely like it too. His volume numbers have been a lot lower, and like we've talked about before in the week last week, a lot of his production has just been those deep shots and things like that. So it is going to be an interesting game to watch where we know they're going to have to probably pass a lot. And I sort of like the over at the 48.5 mark as well in this one. And that about does it for us, boys. That wraps us up. We got some money makers. It's going to be a good week. Can't wait to prop back up here next week. Make sure you guys all go download the PFF Plus app and get your subscription to PFF Plus. Get that 25% off right now with PFF NFL Show 25. That gets you access to the player props tool. That also gets you access to the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. Boys, it's been real. For Ben Linsey, for Judah Fortgang, for our producers, Tyler, Quinn, Eli in the back, I'm Mason Cameron. Until next week, guys, have a good one.